Hello, I'm Keith Hall of Caravan World magazine, and I've just arrived here in the town of Geraldton. That's it, right down there in the middle of the picture. And Geraldton is about 420 or 30 kilometres north of Perth, up the coast. And I've come here to see what this town might have to offer in the way of hidden secrets. I found if you ask people in Perth what there is in Geraldton, they sum it up in two words: swimming and fishing. Now, it is a working port, and as such you might think it didn't have a lot of interesting hidden secrets, but I'm here to find out. I'm going to spend the next few days seeking out interesting little things you might never have guessed about Geraldton. So here's one interesting secret of Geraldton. This Beatles-style yellow submarine is on the town beach, which is just off the main street, almost in the centre of Geraldton. And while it looks like something from a movie, it was intended to be a crayfishing submarine. It was built in the 1960s and never actually achieved its intended purpose. It had one test run, failed or had technical problems, and they gave up. It rusted in the town here for a long time, but has recently been restored and is back in its pure glory. The yellow submarine is very interesting and certainly repays a little bit of close inspection. On the other side you can look in a few portholes and see what it's like inside. And just nearby there's this very large spreading Moreton Bay fig tree. And in Australia, of course, we have a lot of Moreton Bay figs. You might think that's nothing very exceptional, but this one really has a story. In fact, it has such a story as part of a novel. Let's go over and have a closer look at it. This is what's beneath that spreading Moreton Bay fig tree. It's an old-fashioned merry-go-round, and as you may have guessed, Geraldton is where the famous novel The Merry-Go-Round in the Sea was set. Randolph Stowe, the author, was born in Geraldton, grew up here, and wrote his novel about a young boy growing up in Geraldton, partly autobiographical. And this merry-go-round is featured in the first chapter of that book. It makes a good book to read if you're coming here for a holiday. And the merry-go-round in the sea itself was a wreck out in the water, which is no longer there. And indeed, this merry-go-round, although it looks very old, is a replica of the original. This is the West Australia Museum, Geraldton, which has many interesting exhibits inside about the history of this area. In particular, the shipwreck of the Dutch ship the Batavia back in 1629 and subsequent mutiny by the crew and slaughter of most of the Dutch merchants who were on board and their families. Unfortunately for the mutineers, the captain, Pelsart, escaped, went in a small longboat like the one on the left of the picture here, and went to Batavia, got troops, came back and took appropriate action to punish or exile, maroon most of the mutineers who paid for their ill deeds. From here, to see more about what life was like for the more permanent settlers, we're going to head down the coast to Greenwich, where there's a historic settlement, and it's about 20 kilometres south of here. These two rustic cottages are just over 100 years old and are part of the Greenwich historic settlement. This settlement was started just after the mid-19th century, and the settlers fought against fires, droughts, huge floods that came through the valley and drowned a number of the settlers, diseases that attacked their crops, and after about 50 years in the early 20th century they gave up and went away. And today there is still a large collection of buildings which are looked after by the National Trust. The road on the left here is the old main road to Geraldton. The modern road actually has been moved a little bit closer to the coast. You'll occasionally hear cars in the distance behind me. And as well as the church and some old cottages, there is the village school over in the distance there. And moving on around here along the road, we come to the courthouse and jail. Beautiful old verandahed building. The road goes off into the distance this way, and around here are some other cottages from just over a century ago. So this is the inside of a building that was built here in 1870 to be the police station, courthouse and a jail. You can enjoy sitting at the table and pretending you are the presiding judge if you wish. And you can also look around at what justice was like in those days. And this is the police quarters at the back of the court that we were just looking in. And this is a typical kitchen from that time, fairly basic, but compared with what many people would have had, probably quite adequate. And this is the inside of the presbytery where the priest lived, and it's about 100 years old and looks decidedly more comfortable than the police quarters. When you've visited all these other little known secrets of Geraldton, you might actually want to finish up at the HMAS Sydney Memorial, which you're looking at now. This is the site of a true mystery, and it still holds a lot of secrets. During the Second World War, the HMAS Sydney sailed from Geraldton to sea and never returned. It was sunk by a German raider, the Submarine, and they never knew where it went until 2008 when they finally found the wreck. Now you might think that meant there was no secrets, but in fact, of course, they still don't know what happened exactly, and it's believed there are more questions and secrets here than actual answers. This lady in the statue here is still looking out to sea, waiting for the return of the HMS Sydney. And that's the ocean out there where the HMS Sydney went and disappeared. So we're back to where we started, looking down on Geraldton. And if you wish to know more about these secrets I've been telling you of interesting tourist attractions in Geraldton, and more that I didn't have time to show you on video, you can read the article Geraldton Best Kept Secrets in Caravan World.